Hello, my name is Christina Donoghue. I am an ex-graduate of Fashion Journalism BA at Centre St Martin's, and I'm here to give a brief introduction to the history of fanzines. Generally speaking, to start off, fanzines can be traced back to the 1930s. The first ever one was The Comet, set up by Chicago Science Press in 1928, I believe. And it included lots of cartoon type drawings and information about the science research that we're doing at the time. And it was mainly made available to science fiction fans and real fanatics about sci-fi. And they can also be traced back to music scene, which is where my interest in fanzine stems from. The most famous one being Sniffing Glue, set up by a guy called Mark Perry, who founded the zine around 1976. He went to see the Ramones in concert, became so obsessed by them, he thought, I've got to start a fanzine. So he did. He quit his job and started sniffing glue on a children's typewriter with felt tip pens, ready to go. Within its first year of circulation, it had gone from 45 copies to, I think, around 40,000 copies. So quite an achievement. And this kind of kickstarted the trend of the do-it-yourself era and the DIY approach to making zines and punk fanzines that kind of reflected the music that they were writing about. And some of the most esteemed critics within the music industry around the time that went on to write for NME started at Mark Perry's Sniffing Glue. And then that inspired a whole multitude of fanzines, including the Sex Pistols one, which was Anarchy in the UK, and Spare Rib. That's really a brief history to fanzines, and people are still making them now. If anything, they're making them now more than they ever were. They're used as a tool to rebel against the system, previously been silenced, and I think now, with society kind of turning on its head, it's great that we're seeing so many more people kind of give their opinion about what's happening. They can be used to comment on society, current affairs, anything really, whatever they want. And it's just mainly about people that are fanatic about a certain thing and they have a fiery passion, which is why I relate to them, because they're so passionate, and that's just, to me, true romance and absolute freedom. This, I think, is by far my favourite zine. It was also my first zine, but that's not why it's my favourite. It was done for a project I did as part of the first term during my course at Centre St Martin's studying fashion journalism in the first year. The task was to make a zine on musicians that had influenced fashion or vice versa. I chose David Bowie, which is an obvious choosing of mine for, that anyone who has only met me for these 5 minutes would know. I'm obsessed with the musician, have been since the age of 7 or 8, so I thought it was only fair to dedicate my first project at St Martin's to the late musician. I think my favourite parts about the zine has to be the front cover. A fun trivia fact is the Polaroid included is actually an original Polaroid from his concert at the Rainbow Theatre in 1972 that my friend's mum took. So that's, I think, a nice addition to it. And I think my favourite page inside the zine has to be the diary entry that I actually wrote a week after he died, about my feelings and how his death had impacted me as a measly 17-year-old girl at the time. Despite that being 10 months prior to the project, I've always been the type of person that's kept diary entries. I consider them integral to being a writer and, if anything, to being a zine collector. And it kind of gave it a more personal touch. Another favourite page, I think, of this one has to be when I actually stuck a A4 piece of paper in the girls' toilets at Centre St Martin's and asked the question, what does glam mean to you? Because the zine was focused on the glam period of David Bowie. And I got all sorts of answers. So I got 50 Cent, Fergie, Owen Wilson, which I thought was quite a good one. Someone put me, which, yeah, fair, is very CSM. But yeah, I got all different answers and it was a fun interactive. I've tried to make the zine as interactive as possible. Yeah, it was all about his contemporaries, his influences, and I mainly focused on the glam rock period. I also focused on people around him. So Lindsay Kemp, Lou Reed, Angie Berry, his first wife, played a massive role in the construction of Ziggy Stardust and the character itself. I kind of created the zine in the style of a little girl's diary. If you raided your younger sister's bedroom and found a scrapbook with all of her school crushes underneath her bed, padlocked, with the title Keep Out, I used to cut out bits of paper of him, newspapers and that kind of thing when I was around 10 years old. and I still have those clippings today, which I've also included in the zine. So yeah, that is definitely my favourite zine ever, and it also taught me the importance of research when it comes to your material, when creating, to problem solve, but that really is integral to making a zine, I think. Old newspapers, the important equipment like tracing paper, a lot of acetate, lots of coloured card, etc., tissue paper, more delicate things, ribbons, paper clips, calico. I think I've even got to keep all my cutouts. I want to find a letters and make a ransom note. So I'm going to show you how to make a zine from scratch. And the way I make them. So we're going to use this one as an example. So this is one I've done earlier. And try and imitate the way I've made the front cover and the spine of it, really. So I decorated this one in newspaper because I was doing it about Cathy Horan, who is a writer and has written for lots of newspapers before, which is why I thought it'd be quite clever to incorporate the news element in it. So what I start off with is I get a book, like buy a notepad from Tesco, W.H. Smith, Staples, any type of stationery, anywhere that does stationery in the country. Obviously you don't have to wrap every single book you get in newspaper, you can decorate them in different ways, but this is how I'm decorating this one. So double-sided sticky tape is very important. I use it with pretty much everything I do. It's really great because it's very cheap. So I'll get one sheet of newspaper, I think it's from this weekend's Sunday Times. Get the book and place it in there. So what I'm going to do now to attach the spine to the newspaper is, so I'm going to put a single strip of double-sided sticky tape down on the spine. So this is what is going to connect the newspaper to this book. And then, that should look like that. And then what I'm going to do is rip it off. Like that. Easy. So now I've got the spine that's kind of tacked up. I'm going to insert that into the middle bit of the newspaper where the crease is, so it's easier just to fold it. Now you wrap this around. Like that. What we can do, so as you've noticed, there's a bit extra at the bottom and at the top, almost as if we're wrapping a present, but we want to take off this extra bit, I suppose, because we don't really need it. So we're just going to fold it over. Again, double-sided sticky tape, and put it along the very edge of the newspaper. So it's also important to be really gentle when doing this, because any kind of hasty and actions that have been made that haven't really been thought through can kind of create bubbles in the paper, which isn't good for a fresh look at all, because don't get me wrong, despite the fact that this is very DIY, it's also professional and clean. Again, take it off, it's super easy. So I love double-sided sticky tape so much. And then, okay, so we're going to wrap it over as tight as possible. Okay, so we've really already got our first page, and now we're going to do that with the back end of the book. again, this is what I think is so important about zines, especially right now, is that they offer great ways of creativity. They're just really good ways to take your mind off what's happening, make you feel upbeat, get your creative juices flowing again. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to cut and then fold this over. Again, use double-sided sticky tape. So we're going to put them, instead of putting the tape on the paper this time, we're going to actually put it on the book because it's a flatter and more secure surface. So again, making a zine. Now I'm only really showing you how to make the spine today, but you are going to be going through a lot of double-sided sticky tape. So during times like this, when you can buy it, I suggest you bulk up. That's the first stage done, if you can see. Look, fold over. Okay, and then you've got the spine of the book.
This is the final outcome of the zine I made today. I copied a signature style I like to use in all of my fanzines. So the ransom notes type lettering I used on the front cover. So I thought that was a fun detail to include to create the title Acid on the Tongue, which is what a lot of people refer to Cathy Horan as having due to her harsh critique. Classic sticking with the glue onto the piece of calico which was stuck onto the front cover. And that's the zine I've made today.